Start a new setting. Um, Quick recap of what I read. Vince is set on another mission. Find the smart dog, and that smart dog is Einstein. And when and I feared that when he crossed his path with Travis and Einstein, he was trying to take Einstein away from Travis, and that would be very, very sad to read. But I don't think it's gonna happen. It's gonna be Einstein is a smart dog, so I don't know. This book is actually getting interesting. I'm loving it. And Travis took Nora out. They went out on a lunch date. Was it a breakfast or a lunch date? It was a lunch date, I believe. And Nora had a good time because it was her first time ever going out and trying restaurant foods. And she enjoyed it, but with the negative words that her aunt had put in her head, she was too scared to take it a step further with Travis. What is that? Take it a step further with Travis. All right, let's go back to the old setting. Um, this is new. Oh, wrong light. Um, where was I? I forgot. Where was I? Oh yeah, but she was scared to take it a step further because of the negative thought that her aunt had put in her head. So Travis, she wouldn't even hug Travis because the negative thoughts that her aunt had put in her head about men. Not all men are evil, by the way. Um, yeah, so Travis left with Einstein and he just waved at her. But that's where I had left off. Oh. Wished. Oh yeah, she was scared to ask Travis in because of the negative thought that her aunt put in her head. wished she'd asked Travis in for a while. She almost ran after them, almost shouted his name, and almost rushed down the steps for the sidewalk in pursuit. But then the truck was gone, and she was alone again. Reluctantly, she went into the house and closed the door on the brighter world outside. 3. The Bell Jet Ranger executive helicopter flashed over the tree-filled ravines and balding ridges of the Santa Ana foothills. Its shadow running ahead, running ahead of it because the sun was in the west as Friday afternoon waned. Approaching the head of Holy Jim Canyon, Lemuel Lemuel Johnston looked out the window in the passenger compartment and saw four of the county sheriff's squad cars lined up along the narrow dirt lane down there. A a couple of other vehicles, including the coroner's wagon and a Jeep Cherokee that probably belonged to the victim, were parked at the stone cabin. The pilot had barely enough room to put the chopper down in the clearing, even before the engine died and the sun bronze rotors began to slow. Lamb was out of the craft, hurrying down the cabin with his right hand man, Cliff Soames, close behind him. Walt Gaines, the county sheriff, stepped out of the cabin as Lem approached. Gaines was a big man, 6'4" and at least 200 pounds, with enormous shoulders and a barrel chest. His corn yellow hair and cornflower blue eyes would have lent him a movie movie idol look if his face had not been, oh my gosh, I can't read no more. If his face had not been so broad and his features blunt. He was 55, looked 40, and wore his hair slightly longer than he had during his 20 years in the Marine Corps. Although Lem Johnson was a black man, every bit as dark as Walt was white. Though he was 7 inches shorter and 60 pounds lighter than Walt, though he was 7 inches shorter and 60 pounds lighter than Walt. Though he had though he had come from an upper middle class black family, while Walt's folks while what oh my gosh. Wow. Walt's folks had been poor white trash from Kentucky, though Lem was 10 years younger than the sheriff. The two were friends, more than friends, buddies. They played bridge together, went deep sea fishing together, and found unadulterated pleasure in sitting in lawn chairs on one or the other's patio, drinking Corona beer and solving all of the world's problems. Their wives even became best friends. A serene, ser, ser, serendum, ser, ser, a ser, 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 wow, I'm having a hard time. A serendipitous the development that was, according to Walt, a miracle, cause the woman's never liked anyone else I've introduced her to in 32 years. To Lem, his friendship with Walt Gaines was also a miracle, for he was not a man who made friends easily. He was a workaholic and did not have the leisure to nurture an acquaintance carefully into a more enduring relationship. Of course, careful nurturing hadn't been necessary with Walt. They had clicked the first time they met, had recognized similar attitudes and points of view in each other. By the time they had known each other six, by the time they had known each other 6 months, it seemed they had been close since boyhood. Lem valued their friendship nearly as much as he valued his marriage to Karen. The pressure of his job would be harder to endure if he couldn't let off some steam with Walt once in a while. Now, as the chopper blades fell silent, Walt Gaines said, can't figure why the murder of a grizzled old canyon squatter would interest you feds. Good, Lem said. You're not supposed to figure it, and you really don't want to know. Anyway, I sure didn't expect you come yourself. Thought you send some of your flunkies. And NSA agents don't like to be called flunkies, Lem said. Looking at Cliff Soames, Walt said, but that's how he treats you fellas, isn't it? Like flunkies? He's a tyrant, Cliff confirmed. He was 31, with red hair and freckles. He looked more like an earnest young preacher than like an agent of the National Security Agency. Well, Cliff, Cliff, Walt Gaines said, you got to understand where Lem comes from. His father was a downtrodden black businessman who never made more than 200,000 a year, deprived, you see. So Lem, he figures, he's got to make you white boys jump through hoops whenever he can, to make up for all those years of brutal oppression. He makes me call him Massa, Cliff said. I don't doubt it, Walt said. Lem sighed and said, you two are about as amusing as a grown injury. Where's the body? This way. This way, Massa, Walt said, as a gust of warm afternoon wind shook the surrounding trees. As the canyon hush gave way to the whispering of leaves, the sheriff led Lem and Cliff into the first of the cabin's 2 rooms. Lem understood at once why Walt had been so jokey. The forced humor was a reaction to the horror inside the cabin. It was somewhat like laughing aloud in a graveyard at night to chase away the willies. 2 armchairs were overturned, upholstery slashed. Cushions from the sofa had been ripped to expose the white foam padding. Paperbacks had been pulled off a corner bookcase, torn apart, and scattered all over the room. Glass shards from the big window sparkled gem-like in the ruins. The debris and the walls were spattered with blood, and a lot of dried blood darkened the light pine floor. They went crazy. Like a pair of crows searching for brightly colored threads, with which to dress up their nest. 2 lab technicians in black suits were carefully probing through the ruins. Occasionally, one of them made a soft, wordless cawing sound and plucked at something with tweezers, depositing it in a plastic envelope. Evidently, the body had been examined and photographed, for it had been transferred into an opaque plastic mortuary bag and was lying near the door, waiting to be carried out to the meat wagon. Looking down at the half-visible corpse in the sack, which was only a vague human shape beneath the milky plastic, Lem said, what was his name? Wes Dahlberg. Walt said, lived here 10 years or more. Who found him? A neighbor. When was he killed? Near as we can tell, about 3 days ago. Maybe Tuesday night. Have to wait for lab tests to pinpoint it. Weather's been pretty warm lately. Which makes a difference in the rate of uh, decomposition. Tuesday night. In the pre-drawn hours of Tuesday morning, the breakout had occurred at Banodyne. By Tuesday night, the outsider could have traveled this far. Lem thought about that and shivered. Cold? Wall asked sarcastically. Lem didn't respond. They were friends, yes, and they were both officers of the law, one local and one federal. But in this case, they served opposing interests. Walt's job was to find the truth and bring it to the public, but Lem's job was to put a lid on the case and keep it clumped down tight. And keep it clamped down tight. Sure stinks in here, Cliff Soames said. Cliff Soames said, "You should have smelled it before we got this stiff in the bag." Walt said, "Ripe. Not just decomposition," Cliff said. "No," Walt said, pointing here and there to stains that were not caused by blood. Urine and feces, too. "The victims? Don't think so," Walt said. Done any preliminary tests of it?" Lem asked, trying not to sound worried. Lem asked, trying not to sound worried. On site microscopic exam? Nope. We'll make samples back to the lab. We think it belongs to whatever came crashing down through that window. Looking up from the body bag, Lem said, "You mean the man who killed Dahlberg?" "Wasn't a man," Walt said. "And I figure you know that." "Not a man?" Lem said. "At least not a man like you or me." "Then what do you think it was?" "Damn if I know," Walt said, rubbing. Oh, Wells. So Wells Dahlberg was the dude that one of the creatures ran down and killed. Yeah. "Then what do you think it was?" "Damned if I know," Walt said, rubbing the back of his bristly head with one big hand. "But judging from the body, the killer had sharp teeth, maybe claws, and a nasty disposition. Does that sound like what you're looking for?" Lamb could not be baited. For a moment, no one spoke. A fresh piney breeze came through the shattered window, blowing away some of the nauseous stench. One of the labmen said, "Ah," and plucked something from the rubble with his tweezers. Lem sighed wearily. This situation was no good. They would not find they would not find enough to tell them what killed Dauber, though they would gather sufficient evidence to make them curious as hell. However, this was a matter of national defense, in which no civilian would be wise to indulge his curiosity. Lem was going to have to put a stop in their investigation. He hoped he could intervene without angering Walt. It would be a real test of their friendship. Suddenly, staring at the body bag, Lem realized something was wrong with the shape of the corpse. He said, "The head isn't there. You feds don't miss a trick, do you?" Walt said. He was decapitated?" Cliff Soames